Tonight on News 5 Live, the Prime Minister speaks on the widespread allegations against government officials accused of collecting bribes from Armenian-American Lev Derman. The PM also confirms Derman was turned down for a consular appointment by the U.S. The PUP's John Briceño calls on the Prime Minister to disclose the identity of the ministers and for them to resign. The Prime Minister also jumps to the defense of Eva Hernandez, saying an IDB audit proves the contractor performs extremely well. And the 2020 sugarcane crop season officially gets off, but tough times are ahead. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
No tricks, no illusions.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, January 15th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Accused Armenian-American fraudster Lev Derman is sitting in a prison cell in Utah for having allegedly participated in defrauding the United States government of over $500 million. His tentacles as a businessman, however, extend well beyond Washakie Renewable Energy in Plymouth. His international dealings reportedly go as far as Turkey, Russia, and Belize. A former business partner, Jacob Kingston, is alleging that Derman had been paying a Belize government minister as much as $25,000 on a monthly basis and had sought to become honorary counsel to the state of Nevada. While that application was later rejected by the U.S. government, tonight Prime Minister Dean Barrow is doing damage control from what is clearly another black eye for his administration with less than a month before the party's convention. This afternoon, he held a long press conference to outline what he knows about Derman, the pending trial in Utah, and the purported involvement of his cabinet ministers. In the press conference, where he was the sole speaker, Prime Minister Barrow described the actions taken in cabinet on Tuesday.
Let me tell you right now, this Mr. Lev never, ever obtained any kind of Belizean diplomatic status. And I will say more on that later. The evidence, as described in the documents, or another bit of the evidence that it is said, or that the prosecutor says he wishes to lead, talks about Mr. Lev having paid a Belizean government minister $25,000 a month. I don't think it says for how long these alleged payments continued. And it doesn't say what the payments are for. I suppose you can go back and make the connection with the allegation that Mr. Lev wanted Belizean diplomatic status, but I see no express connection made between the $25,000 monthly that it is suggested was paid to a Belizean official and this desire that Mr. Lev obviously had for Belizean diplomatic status. And then another bit of the evidence talks about a second Belizean official. I think in terms of the $25,000 per month, the material may specifically talk about a Belizean government minister. What I have done is this, because while no names are called, the finger has been pointed squarely at two officials of this government. What I did was yesterday in our cabinet meeting, I required each cabinet member to say whether he or she could have any reason to believe that he or she would be the person, or that they would be the persons to which the material is referring. Let me put it another way. Did anyone in this room, talking about the cabinet room yesterday, receive $25,000 per month over a period of time from this Mr. Lev or Mr. What's the name of the associate? Kingston? Or some third person at one time Mr. Kingston said was used as an intermediary? And the answer came back, no.
Prime Minister Barrow went around the cabinet room on Tuesday asking each member in attendance whether they accepted monies from Dermot during the period in question, transactions that go as far back as 2013. With the exception of Deputy Prime Minister Patrick Faber and Tracy Panton, who were absent from the meeting, everyone denied having accepted any form of monies from Dermot, saying there isn't much that can be done until and unless the pending testimony inculpates those members of cabinet. PM Barrow says that once there is sufficient evidence to prove that the monies did reach the hands of ministers, they will be fired forthwith from cabinet.
Other question. Did anyone in this room receive funds from Mr. Lev by way of an electronic transfer? And the answer came back no. If it turns out that indeed there is evidence to show that a member or two members of my cabinet received funds from Mr. Lev, they will be held to pay. I'm not even going to, I want there to be no misunderstanding. I'm not even going to get into the fact that, well, even if somebody is shown to have received, let's say, the $25,000 a month, but there's no allegation that the monies were given to the minister in return for that it constituted, in that Latin term now made famous by the one and only President Trump, in return for a quid pro quo. That would not and could not let the minister off the hook. Might be that the minister could make a hell of a case saying, where is the proof that this was other than a campaign contribution from someone that I knew who supported me? And there are no laws in Belize, much to my chagrin, that regulate campaign finance contributions. But I wouldn't need to get into that sort of an argument with the minister, would I? Because even if that could be shown to be true, you lied to me and you lied to the cabinet in saying that you did not receive any money. QED. That in itself is a basis for me to say, sir, madam, you cannot stay in any cabinet that I lead.
We asked the Prime Minister if he was satisfied with the responses given by members of his cabinet and if he was prepared to launch an investigation ahead of the testimony in Utah. Prime Minister Barrow admits that there is little that can be done without names being called and evidence being presented. But he says if anyone were to come clean after the fact, once that evidence has been put forward, those persons would still be fired for lying to cabinet about their financial interactions with Dermot.
Once there is evidence of monies having been received by any UDP cabinet member from this gentleman, game over. My reaction is going to be axiomatic, and I promise the Belizean people that, as I have always done, I will move swiftly in the face of what I would know to be actionable wrongdoing. But we will get to that position sooner or later. Perhaps we will not get to that position. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the evidence. I don't know when the trial will actually start. All I can do, being a prisoner of the circumstances in the same way you and the entire Belizean nation are also hostage to the whims of the U.S. judicial process, I can't go beyond what I've said, and I can't act before indeed evidence comes forward.
Are you satisfied in terms of the responses given, considering the fact that it is less than likely that someone would honestly come forward and say, I took the money or I received the money? Is there anything else that can be done in your limited capacity, pending the outcome of the testimony, to begin an investigation internally or what have you?
If you could show me how such an investigation would proceed. All we have is this documentation of what is not even evidence. What the prosecutor in the state says he would like to lead as evidence. On that basis, what will we investigate in Belize? I have asked ministers squarely, did you get any money from this gentleman? They have told me no. I am saying that I must accept that because there is not a shred of evidence to the contrary. But we also know that in the States, it is being alleged that the situation is far different. And I am telling you, ultimately, once there is a trial, we will know if anyone was lying and who in such a circumstance is the liar. And I will deal with that person or those persons.
The leadership convention for the United Democratic Party is less than a month away, and the Durman scandal is a raging fire that the Barrow administration is desperately trying to douse ahead of February 9th. But what impact, if any, will it have on the scheduled vote? Prime Minister Barrow outlined several possible scenarios and reiterated that he remains the leader of the UDP and will serve out the remainder of his tenure if necessary.
Sir, do you feel that this would perhaps hamper the upcoming leadership convention in any way?
I don't see how I can answer that. I don't know. I really don't know. If any of the two leadership aspirants turns out to be somebody who received cash, I would fire that person. And I believe that the party, I believe that the party would absolutely disqualify such a person from proceeding with the leadership challenge. Because how you get fired from the cabinet? Remember, if I choose to, I hold the whip hand, Recollect that I don't need to go anywhere until the general elections are called. If I were to have to fire a leadership aspirant, and the party says, well, we don't care that you fire the person. We will still elect that person, and we will say he must take over and lead us into the general elections. Well, I will save them from their own folly. Because I will make it plain that
3 hours prior to the Prime Minister's conference, leader of the opposition, John Briceño, hosted his own press conference, calling on Prime Minister Barrow to take immediate and swift action against the two accused UDP ministers. Briceño is demanding that the Prime Minister disclose the identity of the ministers, He calls on the duo to immediately resign. If that does not happen, Briceño wants the Prime Minister to fire them from cabinet.
Belizeans have seen the evidence that Lev Derman received Belizean nationality under questionable circumstances. You, the press, have reported that 2 UDP ministers went to cabinet to recommend that Derman be made a diplomat, and we have heard the reports that the US government intervened to stop this man, who can only be considered a criminal, from being appointed as a high-ranking Belizean diplomat carrying diplomatic credentials gifted to him by this government. If such a recommendation was indeed made, and I believe it was, then the Prime Minister knows who made them. He would also know who allegedly received those bribes. I'm therefore calling on the Prime Minister to disclose the identity of the 2 UDP ministers who have been associated with Lev Derman, and I call on the 2 UDP ministers in question to immediately step down. Because I have no confidence that these individuals have the integrity to do the right thing, I call on the Prime Minister to immediately fire them from his cabinet. I call on the relevant authorities, free from UDP interference, to commence an investigation into the finances of these 2 ministers with a view to criminal prosecution. This must be done now. There is enough to warrant it.
Lev Derman received Belizean nationality in 2013 under his past name, Levon Termenzian. It is not certain if he obtained a passport since none was found prior, but a special audit verifies he received a nationality certificate. During his press conference, Prime Minister Barrow tied the questionable nationality certificate to the Elvin Penner immigration scandal. But opposition leader John Briceño says that Penner is the past, and that the Prime Minister needs to deal with ministers who were in bed with the alleged Armenian criminal.
The Prime Minister's usual spiel of legal guilt as opposed to factual guilt used in the Elvin Penner immigration scandal will not be tolerated. Yesterday, the Prime Minister did not say he did not know about this. What he said was, and I am quoting him here, the documents call no names and appear to be a preliminary description of evidence to be led when a trial starts. I believe he is aware of who these ministers are. Therefore, he must act now. Too much corruption has been allowed under this UDP administration. We cannot allow it to continue under this or any administration to come. It is time to send a strong message. It is time to do away once and for all with politics as usual. Corruption affects all of us, every single one of us, and it must come to a stop now. Remember how he stood up for Penner and talked about legal guilt and factual guilt when he knew what was happening with his government, but he was not able to go after Penner because it seems that other ministers were also implicated. Their names came out in the Senate investigation, and probably he was afraid. Now, who knows? Maybe he'll go try to throw Penner under the bus right now, but if he were to do that, it's a little too late for him to be able to even consider about going after Penner. Penner is the past. Yes, Penner should be criminally prosecuted, but he needs to deal with his ministers that were supposedly either friends, cronies, partners, whatever it is, with this Armenian criminal.
So what is the PUP's position or stance of the fact that Lev Derman's past name appears on the Auditor General special report that he got Belizean nationality and his nationality file could not be located by the Auditor?
Well, that leads to the very thing that we were talking about. It is because of the pressure that we put in. Remember, I was the one that broke out the story on the 2,000 plus people that got their nationality just before the 2012 election. And a lot of those names, and Derman is one of the names that appear there that were, brought in with all of the other people. Now,
Prime Minister Barrow also took a jab at the leader of the opposition for seeking disclosure on the involvement of two ministers. Barrow read parts of the PUP's press release, and he found it to be undermining. He put it back on Briceño's court, saying that if Briceño knows who the ministers are, then he should provide the names.
How would I know who, if anyone, received bribes? He's undermining or seeking to undermine me just by that statement. The suggestion is that I would know that ministers receive bribes and not do anything. He must be confusing me with himself or with the former Prime Minister. But in any event, he goes on, I am therefore calling on the Prime Minister to disclose the identity of the two UDP ministers who are allegedly associated with Lev Derman, and I call on the two ministers in question to immediately resign. Well, tell us their names, sir. Because I have no confidence that these individuals have the integrity to do the right thing, I call on the Prime Minister to immediately remove them from his cabinet. Blah, 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 blah. Too much corruption, he says, has been allowed under this UDP administration. I went back to that WikiLeaks document that contained the report sent by the US ambassador, Dieter, to his State Department, which spoke to allegations that Dieter deemed credible against John Briceño, specifically, and Said Musa, and talked about Musa's driver collecting the $100,000 in cash, and talked about Belizean government officials, this all concerned oil contracts, in the geology department, saying that the government used to oblige them to give contracts to people who are not qualified. And Dieter put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4. But you know that since the UDP took over, that can't happen. There's a process. You have to advertise. You have to say who it is you're looking to give the contract to and give people a chance to object and all that. Just one of the several ways in which we have tremendously improved on things since we took over.
Going back to the possible consequences of either of the two leadership aspirants being found to have collected bribes from Derman, PM Barrow says that should the convention proceed before the testimony is given, a solemn promise has to be made that once that individual is proven to have accepted monies from Derman, he would have to resign from cabinet despite victory at the convention.
If the trial is postponed and we have the leadership convention and a victor emerges, and the new trial date is fixed, and it is not 6 months from now, it is a year or so, a month or 2 after the convention. I ain't going no place until I see what the results of the trial will be in terms of the evidence led, Or, alternatively, I would have to get a solemn, sacred promise from the leader-elect made in front of the cabinet and backed up in a way that I will explain by the cabinet, that if evidence emerged that he was the recipient of funds, that he will resign. And I would say to the cabinet, I couldn't force it, but I would expect that you would oblige him to resign for your own sakes. Otherwise, just pack your bags, leave, and hand over the government to the PUP.
as a follow-up, is this a cause of anxious worry as you are about to go off into the sunset that
Indeed, because I want to go, but this might keep me longer. Par for the course for any three-term administration. You can't expect that it will be other than a tough road to hoe to be able to win a fourth term. But two things provide me with some comfort. You don't want to suggest that politics should ever be a race to the bottom.
The minister, whose name has been swirling in this scandal, issued a statement today. John Saldiva confirms he met Lev Derman in 2013 and last saw him sometime in early 2015. He interacted with Derman on several occasions and did so publicly, including at the Gold Cup in 2013. But Saldiva rejects any suggestion of involvement in any act of fraud or bribery with Derman, saying he has not used his office for vile quid pro quo activities and that any such suggestion is motivated by political actors who are intent on seeking political mileage for the imminent elections. Saldiva tells the PUP he won't back down and accuses elements in his party of maliciousness and falsehood. He ends his statement with a threat of legal action on anyone who publishes falsehoods against him. Late this evening, Deputy Prime Minister Patrick Faber posted on his Facebook page saying he has had no relationship with Levon Derman, that he did not make any request for him to be made an ambassador or honorary consul, and third, that he did not receive any financial contributions of $25,000 per month or even a one-time 25 cents contribution from Lev Derman or any of his associates. Coming up, Prime Minister Barrow addresses an allegation against the Deputy Prime Minister.
enough.
Aside from the Lev Derman scandal, there is the saga of the convicted murderer, William Danny Mason. The Prime Minister was asked if there was any evidence that Mason gave the Deputy Prime Minister, Patrick Faber, $200,000. The allegation was brought up during a media interview with Shine Barrow on Tuesday. The allegation stems from what a U.S. law enforcement officer testified in the Pastor Llewellyn Lucas murder case. According to the officer, Mason said that he gave Patrick Faber $200,000. When asked if he knew anything about it, PM Barrow was first hesitant, but ultimately ended his remarks by saying that he asked Faber about it and is satisfied with the answer given.
In an interview yesterday, Shine Barrow asserted that Danny Mason had paid Patrick Faber $200,000 in an interview. Do you know anything about that?
I know that no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to.
No, he said that there was an allegation.
Yes.
He didn't himself allege that that was paid. He said that he heard about that allegation. Shine didn't say that.
Well, indeed. Remember that there was an argument in court about whether a statement from a U.S. embassy official should be admitted. In that statement, he said that he had interviewed Mason while Mason was in custody. And Mason told him certain things. The judge, I think, only allowed in a portion of that statement. For what it is worth, he did claim that Mason had said certain things about Patrick Faber. I spoke to Patrick about it and he said it's absolute nonsense, and I completely believe him.
A group of foreign nationals charged in connection with the landing of a plane carrying $60 million worth of cocaine in September of last year were back in court today. The 6 persons charged have been imprisoned for 5 months, and today they were to appear before the magistrate court, but the matter was adjourned. They are Miguel Cruz Meseguer, David Noe Oriano Disqua, Carlos Humberto Enriquez Gomez, Juan Pablo Larea Cruz, Alan Giovanni Mejia, and Norlan Jose Carrasco Lopez. Today, outside of the court, reporters caught up with attorney Dicky Bradley. We note that he is not representing the accused, but he says that the family of 2 of the accused requested his assistance to find out how the case is progressing. Here's what he had to say to reporters about the matter.
We know that there are several accused persons, but some were found by plane, some were found far away, all kind of situations. So, but the situation in relation to factual information is that today, all the persons charged in relation to a drug plane found, I think, the 9th of September of 2019, were brought in front of the Chief Magistrate. They were arraigned already, mean charges were read to them. They have not been called upon to plead whether they are guilty or not, because it is still unclear whether the trial will take place in the magistrate court or will be taken before a jury in the Supreme Court. So that is not clear as yet. The other thing is that the Chief Magistrate set the date of 18th of March for them to return to court, and that is a date when more than likely disclosure will be available so that they are in a position to then decide if there is evidence against them or some of them. The evidence is strong, the evidence is very strong, which will determine what position they will take. They are not all represented. Only a few of them have an attorney. Oswald Twist represents, I think he called 2 or 3 names. He didn't want to share clients.
Could you share with us whether or not the issue of bail, since they have already spent like about 5 months, will they be able to apply here at the lower court, or do they need to go to the Supreme Court?
I would imagine, Anita, that it is highly unlikely that a magistrate would grant bail to foreigners who are charged for drug trafficking in relation to what it is being alleged. A plane was found, drugs were found, and persons were said to have been in the vicinity of the drugs. We have not seen any information yet because the way how Belize they go, that area of the road, mile 7 on the so-called coastal road, it's not on any coast. Hubert Ellington built that road to reduce the length of time it takes to go from Belize City to Dangriga. That is not a coastal road, but that road, the Manatee Road, at mile 7, could well be that there's some paper somewhere that it is air strip. It's allowed to land plane for agricultural purposes, no? So I'm not clear about that part. You're laughing. I would think that until the disclosure is available, it would be a little premature for any attorney to make a submission to a magistrate at this early stage, because you would need to have some facts to say that now that I have the disclosure, there is nothing against my client. My client was spraying his crops in the area and he heard like a plane landed and he went to see what it was.
The accused men are to return to court on March 18th. A Belize City man was shot on Tuesday night. Around 8:20, Curtis Campbell was riding his bike on South Creek. When he arrived near Muhammad Ali Street, he noticed a motorcycle behind him. Campbell told police that the cycle sped off past him and then stopped next to the Seagull Bridge. He reported that the driver of the cycle pulled out a firearm and fired several shots towards his direction. Campbell is presently hospitalized with gunshot injuries, and police are investigating. A police officer was injured while confronting an armed man in Cowpen Village. According to police, just before an 8 on Tuesday morning, the cops were called out to the village where they met Narciso Marzano, who reported that his son, Byron Ramos, whom he has a protection order against, was assaulting his daughter and granddaughter. Ramos, who was carrying a machete in his hand, was ordered to place it down on the ground. Ramos didn't comply and swung it towards Police Constable Michael Roches, injuring him. A struggle followed, after which the officer detained Ramos. He is expected to be charged. As you heard earlier, Prime Minister says there is no evidence yet to tie any member of cabinet or any other government official to the alleged bribery involving Lev Derman. The Armenian-American national was flagged in the Auditor General's report on the Immigration and Nationality Departments for 2011 to 2013 as one of several persons who acquired a nationality certificate, but there were no supporting documents to indicate if he was issued a passport. When News 5 caught up with Minister Godwin Hulse, he commented on the issue, saying that Derman is not a Belizean, and here's why.
His name came up in the audit report, and when it came up in the audit report, there was a note that says they couldn't find any passport having been issued. We couldn't find any files. We haven't seen any official certificates. As far as I'm concerned, he's not a Belizean. And if he ever tried to be a Belizean, he would have to produce that certificate duly signed by a minister. All the former ministers of immigration, I think, are still alive in this country. Their signatures are well known. It's an easy thing to go to minister and say, this look like your signature. He'd have to produce that. If he doesn't produce that, that can't be advanced anywhere. So as far as I'm concerned, he's not a Belizean. When he makes his statement or make his court papers, if he calls names or so, then that has to be dealt with. But up until that time, that's where that rests. As far as I'm concerned, this gentleman, name was in the audit report. There was a very, very lengthy Senate hearing. I was not part of the hearing. In fact, I was on the stand being given evidence, and so we have to wait for that report as well to see what they say about those names. But as far as from where I sit, if you can't produce a certificate that was duly signed, if it cannot be shown that you were sworn in, because people forget those processes, you know. It's not only the signature of the minister. The law says you must be sworn in. If you are not sworn in, you're not a citizen. And it's easy to check swearing in because everybody named there and it's a public thing.
Last week, UDP standard bearer Diane Finnegan collected documents from hundreds of immigrants at her political office on Partridge Street in the Lake Independence Division of Belize City. She claimed that the documents were to be presented to the Minister of State for Immigration, Beverly Williams, at a meeting held on January 13th. But the minister was a no-show, and the documents were not presented to CEO Edmund Zuniga or any of the two directors who were at the Swift Hall meeting. Today's substantive Immigration Minister Godwin Halls was asked about the legality of Finnegan's actions, given that the processing of immigration documents is to be done at the respective offices across the country. He says the protocols put in place back in January 2014 are inviolable.
It doesn't matter which standard bearer or agent decides they're going to help people to procure their nationality. The process cannot change, and this is the process. In January the 6th of 2014, we signed into law the Nationality Committee. The Nationality Committee is not a government committee. It's made up of government officials and private sector social partners. The chamber sits, the church sits, the union sits on it. It's co-chaired by them. The process is very clear. Anybody who wants to acquire Belize nationality by registration or marriage, must first meet certain requirements. Those requirements are included in their application. Their names are published first in the Gazette. You in the media can go and see who all's names was published. After it's published, then it goes to the committee. The committee scrutinizes it in detail to see whether they qualify. If the committee says they qualify, the name is published again in the Gazette to say they qualify. Then the minister signs the certificate. The minister cannot sign the certificate before. It's not done there. Then they go to a public swearing in, where the public and the media is invited. So 500 people could be out there. They still have to go through that process. And it is only when they've completed the process and sworn in and made a citizen of Belize, then they can register as a voter and vote. So that system cannot change. It's built in law. There are lots of safeguards. So yes, the perspective and the outlook is ordered, but it can't happen. And if anybody knows it's happening, if you, the public, know of anybody who has been given any nationality without that having gone through that process, that's a serious offense. And the penalties are severe. You can have up to 15 years in jail and $50,000 fines. So please, politicians will try to help anybody. It doesn't mean that they can force the system through or bypass any of the mechanisms.
After the break, still no copy of Emir Hernandez's contract, but the PM says his work is validated by the IDB.
turning dreams into reality.
Prime Minister Dean Barrow also took questions on a number of other issues aside from the Lev Derman scandal at his press conference. Chief Justice Kenneth Benjamin reaches retirement age in the first part of this year. He was appointed Chief Justice in 2011, and whether or not his contract will be extended has not been decided. Benjamin has met with Attorney General and is expected to meet with the Prime Minister in the near future. According to Barrow, the matter is up in the air at the moment.
I don't yet know what will happen. I'm supposed to meet with the Chief Justice, and I know that the Attorney General already met with him. What the Attorney General tells me, no decision has been taken as of this point about the Chief Justice's future. So it's still a matter that's a little bit up in the air. Well, everything will have to be considered, and surely that's one important ingredient. In defense of the Chief Justice, I would say that while we can't get away from the fact of the delay, he's been excellent in terms of administration. Everybody said or says to me that if only he could concentrate on that, but trying to manage both the administrative overload and the judgment writing process has proven a challenge for him. Fact is, what it is what it is. And I accept your contention that in making a determination, that particular ingredient must be part of the mix to be considered.
The Chief Justice is facing serious complaints lodged by the Bar Association. One of the chief complaints is the delay in the delivery of judgments, as well as the exclusion of the Bar President from the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. To show their displeasure, during the opening of the 2019 legal year, executive members of the Bar were absent, including the President, Director of Public Prosecutions, Sherilyn Vidal. Commenting on the issue was Prime Minister Dean Barrow, who characterized the boycott as not very successful.
Not a very successful one from what I gather, but in any event, that was issue specific, item specific. The quarrel, as I understand it, over the seating or the not seating of the President of the Bar on the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, for reasons that the Chief Justice insists are rooted in solid law, and presumably again the whole question of delay. But it's nothing new, and that certainly does not take away from what I insist is an outstanding record in his case with respect to administration.
Prime Minister Dean Barrow says that he is surprised that the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry has not received documents it had requested. The request was in the respect of the Coastal Highway contract, which was awarded to Emer Hernandez to the tune of $130 million. Hernandez has won several contracts with government, but the quality of his work is being questioned. When asked about it in December 2019, PM Barrow said that the chamber would be provided with the information, but as the Attorney General explained, the chamber did not properly invoke the Freedom of Information Act. Today, PM Barrow told the media that he can't believe that the chamber's request has not been fulfilled.
I discussed the matter with the minister, and we were clear. Those things are to be handed over. There is nothing to hide. I am shocked to hear that they have not been handed over, and I will, as soon as I leave here, check on that. I can't believe it.
According to the Prime Minister, an IDB audit on the infrastructural works of Emer Hernandez was concluded. PM Barrow says that Hernandez received a letter from the IDB telling him that he is cleared from all allegations.
I have received a copy of a letter sent to Mr. Emer Hernandez by the IDB in respect to that audit that the Leader of the Opposition insisted be conducted, suggesting that something was wrong. A letter which absolutely clears Emer Hernandez and says, think no more of it. This matter is over and done with. you're going clear.
I've never found anybody who has been able to point to one project that has been successfully carried out, a project of high standards, a project done by Emer Hernandez.
But I don't.
Is that of concern to you?
We're not get into that kind of argument because I'm telling you, the leader of the opposition just had the IDB audit this man, and the man came out smelling like a rose, and the IDB, in fact. The reason why the leader of the opposition complained to the IDB is because Emer has done and is doing work for the IDB, supervised by the. They obviously feel that Emer performs extremely well, and that's what they're saying. So I don't take what you say is some opinion you have from other people and put that above what the professionals at the Inter-American Development Bank said. So, let me close it up.
We're finances or the quality of work done?
Both. That was the complaint, that this man, they get things for, I know he can't do good work. And the people do not agree.
When we come back, the sugar crop opens, but tough times are ahead for the sugar belt. The mills were cranked up today at Tower Hill, but the customary long lines of sugarcane trucks were missing. This year, because of a late start, production is taking a hit, so farmers are bracing for a tough season ahead. At least 40,000 persons depend on the industry for their livelihood, which means that the entire sugar belt will be facing hard economic times. News 5's Dwayne Moody was in Orange Walk at ASR BSI, where everyone was doing their best to put their best foot forward.
After a month's delay, the 2020 sugarcane crop season officially opened with a symbolic ceremony held at the BSI compound at Tower Hill in Orange Walk. The late start was agreed to by all stakeholders, the millers and the farmers, following the drought of 2019 that affected the sugarcane crop. BSI Director Mark McLachlan says that over 10,000 persons, whether directly or indirectly, benefit from the industry in the north.
We employ around about 670 highly skilled Belizean men and women who run this mill and keep it working. We give, as an industry, employment directly and indirectly to around about 10,000 people in the north of this country. Around about 40,000 people generally rely on this industry for their livelihoods in the north, and that represents around about 40% of the economy in the north of Belize. This industry itself is responsible for bringing in about 6% of Belize's foreign exchange income. And we produce about 30% of the agricultural gross added value for Belize. And we provide through Belkagen behind us here around about 15% of Belize's electricity needs.
Contributions to the country's economy aside, this year the industry has projected millions of dollars in losses as sugarcane production dropped by 30% due to the prolonged drought. And that was evident this morning because even though milling began, the inclement weather over the past few days has compounded the issue. There was no sight of trucks laden with cane along the route leading to the mills because the rainy weather has prevented farmers from harvesting their crops and taking to the mills. The projection is that just about 1 million tons of sugar cane will be milled. That's 300,000 tons less than last year's production.
From a record production last year, it's going to fall off significantly this year because of the drought. We don't know exactly by how much. Sugar prices are beginning to rally, thankfully, after a long period in the doldrums. There's still a lot of sugar stocks in the world to use up, so we're not going to see anything dramatic initially, but there's definite that the world is now, the global sugar market is in a deficit position, which is better for pricing looking forward. We put a lot of investment into this business for the future, and we want to leverage that in support for our communities here and for our farmers here to overcome some very distinct and difficult challenges related to the weather in this last year.
All four cane farmers associations and their members have accepted that the industry will realize a loss in this season. The government of Belize has acquired a $2 million loan facility that will be used to assist farmers affected by the drought. Minister of Agriculture says that they have just recently completed a register of the farmers, and within weeks, funds will be issued to those affected.
The ministry engaged the Caribbean Development Bank and other agencies. We have a $2 million loan which we will use to give to the farmers as inputs for the subsequent crops, so it comes back. That's fertilizers and whatever else they need. We needed to know all the farmers and register them and know where they are and know who they are, so that it was a transparent upfront thing and would not go into any political criticism where we only help them one. So that is what the ministry did, devoid of all the politics, and so that when the assistance come, it will be on a pro rata basis per tonnage of farmers. You know, we gave out the aid to the other farmers already, and that ranged from about $200 to $9,300.
Minister Halson McLachlan also spoke about projects going forward.
Our key focus areas for this year: completing our investment in producing added value sugars, which should be completed later this month. That's the direct consumption phase 2 investment, $20 million to enable us to produce a much higher quantity of value-added direct consumption sugars. We need to focus obviously on the core challenges we have of climate change, water management, irrigation, drainage, all of the things associated to make this a stronger business in the future.
We're negotiating with the World Bank a large loan to do water management, which is very important, and there will be various types of facilities, but the whole idea is, for example, all the rains that are falling in January here, if we could catch it and conserve it and store it to then use for animals and plants, etc. So those are the programs we're looking at.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Coming up after the break, Belize Association of Planners awards over $70,000 in microgrants.
In life,
meet the demands of our customers' digital lifestyle. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
The Belize network of NGOs received $27,000 to fund an exercise that will strengthen civil society organizations to promote good governance and accountability. The donation is made possible through the Belize Association of Planners and Research Triangle Award. The money, according to BAP, came through a CARSI-funded project. Senator Osmani Salas of the Belize network of NGOs shared how the monies will be used to strengthen their membership and how it will contribute to the project's objective.
This initiative will help us to understand what the challenges are, what are the challenges faced in the NGO community, the registered NGOs that have not been in good standing, what are the problems, and how can we help. We know that there are at least 150 registered NGOs growing by the month, and even though at the end of last year we had 59 NGOs in good standing, about a dozen of those were newly registered NGOs. So our NGOs that have been around for a while are facing challenges, and it will take resources and time to reach out not only to the registered NGOs but the larger civil society to understand what the situation is. As part of our strategic direction, one of our two major goals is to be the unified voice for NGOs, and an objective within that is for all registered NGOs to be in compliance with the NGO Act. We have recognized that as NGOs, if we are to play an effective advocacy role, and call government to task every now and again, we need to be as beyond reproach as possible ourselves. We need to set the example. The project, which will be supported via this CARSI-funded initiative, seeks to do a number of specific things. One is to lead the facilitation of a national forum for NGOs, including the ones that are not registered, and identified in consultation with BAP, to discuss and build consensus and see how we can increase the number of registered NGOs in good standing. We also want to put together a comprehensive database of NGOs and CSOs, good standing, registered, not registered, to have a good sense of the NGO landscape, and use that platform to encourage the registration of civil society organizations.
Two other local organizations also received funding through the Belize Association of Planners and Research Triangle International Micro Grants. The Emerging Corps and the Belize Association of Persons with Diverse Abilities, BAPTA, received $10,000 Belize each for 6-month projects. Representatives of the two organizations share how the grants will be used to further good governance and accountability in Belize.
We're going to be looking at the last elections at the village, town, or municipalities, and national elections, the last ones, using archival data, and also doing interviews with women who successfully participated or not. Because part of the interest is finding out what makes them do what they do. Why did they participate? What were the push or the pull factors that influenced them? The intention, based on the results of the interviews and archival research, the secondary data research, is to actually make policy recommendations for how we can improve and increase how the government, through the agencies that try to make women more inclusive in governance in our lives, that the recommendations would be for them as to what kinds of things could be done to increase participation. So government on the one hand could utilize these recommendations, but also the National Women's Commission, Women Issues Network, and all the other organizations that want to ensure that there is gender balance, that there is inclusive participation, that we would use this, we would aim at making changes there. Essence of what it is we're going to be doing, and we're hoping that the results of this research project can help to provide some evidence-based, some factual information for Belize. Not just, oh, we know that this is what people think or something like that, but really what comes from the people themselves who participated. That's the kind of data that Belize needs to do more of.
Up next, a helping hand for Dara's feeding program.
With over 100
One more issue from the Prime Minister. Chief Executive Officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Patrick Andrews has tendered his resignation. Andrews, who was appointed in 2017 after he returned from the embassy in Washington, is reaching retirement age. According to the Prime Minister, his replacement has yet to be confirmed.
I understand that he is retiring. He's retired before I came back, and then I think this time it's for real. But the minister and we spoke about a possible replacement, but the minister has not yet confirmed to me what his wish is in that regard.
Businessman and politician Lee Mark Chang came up big for Dara's feeding program. Today, Chang presented a $1,000 check to the grassroots initiative that feeds about 50 underprivileged school children from the area. Chang also committed a monthly check for the rest of the school year. Joel Dara Robinson's 13-year program is at risk of closing down because he says he can't maintain it without support. Robinson reports that it takes roughly $3,000 a month to keep the program going. He told us that since going public with his story in the news last night, he's been receiving calls and promises of support. Today, Chang and Robinson spoke with us about the donation to the cause.
Well, first of all, I saw the news last night, and I immediately contacted Dara this morning, and I offered him some assistance, monthly assistance for the entire school year. And so hopefully that you have some other businesses or people who are concerned that can also give a helping hand and chip in.
What touched you about this story?
Well, definitely Dara does a lot of work, and I've seen kids here also that eats during the lunchtime. And so kids need to be looked after. They're our future. One of the main purpose of this is to try to reach out to other businesses or people that are willing to do a little small donation. Like I said, one full basket. Hopefully that the feeding program can continue for as long as it can.
The beauty with this and a few others, the cash in a hand, and I could continue the program that one boost, and Lee Mark said, he want to do a monthly donation, but with the whole on to your words, because, but I have to give thanks for the man gone, as I had a Caribbean show and him were in this area, so I guess we could work together, stay in tune, The man give me a number so I could link her in case of anything else. So I'm more than grateful. I'm more than grateful.
Now, yesterday you described your feeding program as being on life support. Is it still on life support after you get this?
No, listen, like I tell you, a few other people reach out to me and other business. Some not in a hand yet, but it's positive. So the program will continue, I could tell you that. And since I do the interview, the community, everybody, they reach out to me how need they reach out to me, So I thank God and I feel blessed, and I want to continue the work.
Are you surprised by the outpouring of support? Because I know as well there are people who have reached out to us from abroad.
I never yet. I can't keep up with the phone with the amount of people where the poor. I guess over the years people hear a lot, but I never yet come to the nation and tell them are so much in need. And I guess when I do that, people can just wow,
If you want to assist Dara's feeding program, you can call him at 623-3662. And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, good night.